Questo è il famoso momento wiki, tavola aperta. ehm, Abbiamo aperto anche il divano. e è un momento che stiamo costruendo proprio ora. Quindi a maggior ragione il pubblico, anzi voi, potrete contribuire. Paolo giustamente mi diceva di partire da un elemento che nelle nostre lunghe riunioni per preparare questa conferenza, su cui online già si discute con voti da Gazzetta dello Sport, e quello che mi aveva colpito alle web era la percezione di forse l'abbiamo già detto in questi giorni, di un mondo che non è un piccolo settore che non si sa bene se mettere in economia o in cultura, perché questa è la situazione, sempre per parlare male dei giornali. È un mondo che invece è un'industria che è fatto da persone che investono, che lavorano molto, rischiano ma fanno impresa. E quindi è un'industria. In America internet è un'industria con i rischi, con le varie situazioni post 2001, eccetera, eccetera. È importante quindi, anzi è quasi naturale fare un confronto con l'Europa e con l'Italia, dove almeno in Italia nemmeno io percepisco internet come un'industria, ma anzi lo percepiamo come uno strumento, come per alcune parti è, ma quella decina di web agency che ogni città ormai ha, perché fanno tutti i siti, e-commerce, queste cose qua vengono viste ancora come una cosa strana, anche se la metà degli italiani navigano ogni mese. La metà degli italiani, e l'Italia è un paese anziano, quindi parecchi. Beh, no, se parlo io non sarebbe anziano. Insomma. E per questo abbiamo sull'ottimo divano moroso allargato, abbiamo questi 4 imprenditori che possono darci questa... Ah, ok, ok. Hai fatto bene. Quindi darei la parola a Paolo.
Grazie. Well, so, I mean, to make a long story short, the web is perceived as an industry in the US, in other countries. And also, if many Italians are online, and every little Italian town has a bunch of web agency, and there are some very large companies doing stuff online, still is not perceived. And I mean, also if he works online, and when he came back from the web, was kind of amazed from the fact that it's perceived as a big industry in the rest of the world. So I would start to. I would actually like to start from Gigi, who sometime last night probably wrote a post on his blog commenting Italian versus, I mean, commenting the fact that yesterday somebody here said that Italian entrepreneurs are not moving as fast as other countries. So I think it could be an interesting start for this conversation. And of course, it's very open
wiki moment, so you
it's a
can
wiki moment.
participate.
So I mean, we have people working on very large companies here. We have people working in agencies. We have, I mean.
Well, I think I can start because I was an entrepreneur, and so I...
Yeah, but you were a smart entrepreneur.
Oh, thank you. And I've been lucky because I've seen, as I told before, I've seen the movie. You know, I started when there was not a clue what the web, what the internet was in terms of business. I still have the slides when in '94 I presented the web to my bigger customer, to Michelin, to Kraft, I remember, to Galbani, you know, and I did the first presentation actually at the board of directors of big companies. Okay. So I felt that there was something, and I've seen it, and I made my company on it, and I made my possibility to retire and then start playing cello, because without the web I couldn't play cello. So that's good for me. And I've been in the US 3 times every year for a long time to look for products, you know, and I've seen the difference. Okay. And what I said yesterday in a long post that I made on my blog is, what have I learned from my business experience is that we can listen, without being derogatory to any other country, okay? We can listen to the American marketing manager of the corporation number 1 that says, we serve the Fortune 500 companies, and we have a reference, the Ministry of Defense, Citicorp, blah, blah, blah. And then you look at Udine and you say, what the hell are those companies? 2 options. 1, you go to America, or you look at a reality that it's next to you, and you try to understand and try to find the right language, the right metaphors. You start being able to do offer in dialect, if this is what they want, and you start listening rather than pretending that because you have the answer, the one and only answer, you know, and the holy grail of truth, you think. I remember I was in Nestle. If you ever been to Nestle in Milan, there is this entrance, fantastic, a waterfall in marble, okay? And I was there to fight at the time for 50,000 lira, roughly, what, 40 bucks? Discount on a printer. And I said, this thing here cost way much more than my damn printer. Who's right? Who's wrong? I am wrong. I am wrong because I have to change my language, to change the way I think the technology is, and start to understand. And I also, what I said in the post yesterday, and I showed to Gaspar, when I started the Civic Network at Garda Lake, 19th of September 1994, people said, this internet stuff is coming, but we Italians, we can't. We don't know computers. We are so back. We are so untechnological because we are pizza and mandolini. By the way, when the others say we are pizza and mandolini, we kind of offended, you know. But then we keep on saying of ourselves that we are non-technological and blah, blah. So, and I had signals that told me that was not true. And so I asked my wife, that was in the school council, why don't we make an interview to all, not to a sample, to all the parents. And so it came out, 19th September 1994, that 58% of families had a computer. And I knew it was true, because I'm in that generation where the poor people bought the encyclopedia to the kids and spent money for the education. So if you consider the general population, maybe you have a wrong number. But then if you say family with kids at school, you'll discover that all today have a computer. And someone says, well, but you include a video game. So what? You know, just the non-expert think that there is a difference between a video game and a computer. It's a kind of technology, it's a kind of relationship. The real information that I got there was that 50% of parents, just 30% of parents, because 50 say, no, I don't understand, and 20 says, what? just 30%, just 1/3 of the parents were able to be parent, be educator, understanding what was going on, interact with their kids. And this is why we started all that. So this is what I'm saying again today. In the enterprise world is the same. So when you talk to an entrepreneur and he says, and he looks at, oh, Mr. Valdemarin, very interesting, this blogging stuff. Send me an offer and talk to my guy. Oh, by the way, I have to order a press machine that is worth a couple million euro. So my point is, if they don't buy this technology, it's not because they're idiot. They don't buy this technology maybe because we are not able to understand their metaphor, to understand their problems, to understand their languages. And if they are running a business, I assume that they are smart people, that they know something about a certain market that I don't know of. And so my first goal is, as a living interaction system, what can I understand of that business to be able to interact? This was the sense of my message. So every time you have a customer that says, no, it's too much. When they say it's too much, it's just an excuse because they are polite. Usually they're good people and they hate to see you suffer. So they say, they prefer to say, I'm poor. I don't have the money means I'm poor, okay? Instead of saying, you are just a beep, 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 and you don't understand my problem. So when they say there's no money or I have other things, go back and say to yourself, I did it wrong. I didn't ask the right questions. I didn't do all the possible investigation. I told to my sales guys, before going to a customer, do you know that industry? Do you know who are the players? Do you know what is he doing? Oh, but I have the new Microsoft release XYZ. Forget. This is not the way you do business here. I don't know in America. Well, I know a bit. But here, I know. But, you know, I was just moving you away to look him. Sorry. No. Americans do not understand that the way you do business in Udine is different than the way you do business in Padua. That the way you do business in Milan and in Turin and in Lugano is completely different. So it's much more difficult for us to develop a business strategy around the web because, well, we have a country where you have fantastic people, excellent food, but then we have this structure that comes from our history and from our entrepreneurial history, and we have to take this as an opportunity other than an obstacle. I remind you that Umbria has the most magnificent towns, you know. The difficulty of a mountain, if you were in US, you say, okay, give me a caterpillar, I flat it out, okay, much easier, flat it out, and boom, 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 build. If you go to Spello, and you look and say, probably an American says, no, there is not return on investment on building here because it's too expensive, you know. We made the obstacle as a challenge to our talent, and then we built some of the most magnificent towns in history. So this is my view. This is the way I try to. And after all, I can tell you it was good for me. I'm playing the cello.
I could dive on that. So I think the wonderful thing is that wherever there's really hard and big problems, whether it's for one customer or for lots of other people, the more you can discover the really big problems, the more opportunity there is. If you think about, I would disagree only slightly in one way, in that I don't think entrepreneurs have a choice. Do I do my startup here or do I do my startup in the Silicon Valley? I think there's wonderful hybrid models that are starting to emerge. So from when I lived in Estonia and watching Skype grow up, where they incorporated in Luxembourg, they had their engineering and product development base in Tallinn, and they had their capital formation and marketing function initially in Sweden, but then in London. I think models like that are actually a lot more reflective of, well, the way that more of your customers are going to be anyway, right? 85
It ended up being bought by an American company.
and bought by an American company, right, for way too much, which is one of the goals you might have. But the interesting thing is, I actually think when you see in other pockets around Europe in particular, there's a tremendous amount of web innovation, and that starts from a very simple thing of the way that Dave Sifry would describe it. When he started Technorati, he was scratching his own itch. He was solving a problem for him and for his community. He did so transparently and kept iterating on what that product was. Now, Dave had the benefit of being an experienced entrepreneur and based in the Silicon Valley. But the Valley really is only worthwhile in kind of three ways. First and foremost, it's a marketing function. It's this idea. The world pays attention to it because of the new ideas. It's very easy to get interest and exposure on a global basis for a lot less money. The second is capital, access to capital, and that matters and that doesn't. And venture capital isn't the greatest thing in the world, believe it or not. But it is a way of ramping up into not reaching a scaling limit in your access to capital more than anything. And then also finding, but the third part is just this, a thing that most European countries have troubles with, right, which is celebrating failure, right? We have a different culture in that when somebody fails, we go, that's great. That person probably learned something and can probably go and apply that. And so the other side of that means taking risk is something that's really celebrated, right? So the thing that I'd really encourage is find ways in which you can take risk, that you can celebrate the differences of yourself and your community, that you can get the germination, the beginning of what your web startup might be, but then also make sure that you're networking appropriately and keeping an eye out for, is the business that I'm making better off solely focused in local markets here, or if I am looking to truly address a global market, then I am going to have to consider what parts of the business may end up being better off in different places. And the last small comment that I'd make is I've seen a lot of first-time conferences like this, right, where you're getting exposure to some different people, different ideas, but it's really kind of you're forming this different kind of group. And my great hope would be if you come back, in a year from now, you'll find somebody who said, in the middle of, this event, that was the moment where I had that aha moment, and I decided that I might take this risk, and I might go ahead and do that thing that I've been toying around with, right? Because I think the thing that you're waiting for is more and more independent web startups to emerge like that. People become successful to get this feeling of entrepreneurialism, web entrepreneurialism, and for that to spin off into all kinds of different areas within the economy.
Bravo.
Can a venture capitalist go to seat D7? D7 for the venture capitalist. I think in the UK, obviously we're very different to Italians, but we're also very similar. From what I heard yesterday, and it surprised me because it sounded so much like us. We do a good line in doing ourselves down, and I don't know what attitudes to failure are like in Italy. They're very poor in the UK culturally. We have the benefit, and I wasn't a fan of Mrs. Thatcher, but we do have the benefit of her legacy, which was to make it easier and easier and easier to start a business. And the reality of any business, web business or non-business in the UK, is that it's easier than ever to start one. Friends of mine leave their consultancies and start small consultancies all the time. It costs nothing. You get a phone, you get an internet line, that's it. But I think that it's one thing to change the legislation. It's a very different thing to change the culture and people's attitudes. And people are still very fearful of going out on their own, branching out on their own. However, they are. And I think the flip side to it is that actually are we good as a culture at doing startups is a boring conversation. There are more interesting conversations that you can have here with one another about all of the opportunities that are around us. And that kind of cultural debate can, it is interesting, but let's get on with starting up businesses.
Oh, well, even because, we are good, and I mean, my personal experience is that for the last about 6 months, we have been sending products that we develop in Gorizia, which is a town here, to American companies. And the development process is going through a company where the product is developed between the US, India, and here. And we found out that what we do is not only as good as, I think it is way better than what has been developed by these other groups. It doesn't necessarily mean, you know, Americans versus India. It depends on which Americans and which Indian companies. But anyway, we are developing world-class software. And I mean, I might be very lucky because I found this great group of developers working with me. But I mean, I did found them within maybe a 30 miles radius from my home. So I mean, and this is not Silicon Valley. It's not Palo Alto. I mean, it's way different. So, it's Palo Alto.
Well, Paolo, you are.
Alto, not very much, but yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that we are as good as. At the same time, we were, I mean, with Marco and a few other friends, we were visiting, well, when we met, it was 3 weeks ago in Palo Alto, and we went visiting Google, and we went visiting Stanford University, and we met all these entrepreneurs. And we were trying to understand what the differences are between here and there. So, I mean, the one thing is, if you are in this business, well, not everybody, but almost everybody is in Silicon Valley. So, I mean, you have, I've been saying for years that the most advanced technology that is igniting Silicon Valley is barbecues. Because, I mean, you keep bouncing in each other. I mean, you keep meeting, and of course there is this very fast exchange of ideas. We live in the country, in the so-called 100 towns country. So, I mean, there are 100 cities around Italy. And also, okay, I might be stuck in the middle of nowhere here, and Milano probably is a more active center. But still, I mean, my clients are all over the country. Moving, meeting, and exchanging ideas cannot be that fast. At the same time, of course, we have the web that makes us fair. And of course, we were in Palo Alto, and I brought Marco to your office, and we had a meeting, and maybe we will do business. So. I mean, there are many differences, and probably there are ways of reading.
And just a real small point, the thing that I enjoy the most about my business, and you have to find a business where you're actually loving what you're doing, or you won't do really well, is not just, you know, my company, but there was this community that started to form about 4 or 5 years ago of kind of the usual suspects who are passionate about blogging and social software. You end up running into them at the same conferences. And at Silicon Valley, there are events kind of like this almost every single night, right? And we have the density for people to meet physically, right? In fact, there's way too many events. And so, but there's a thing about the wider community. And it's similar to the way you were talking about the web as an industry. And the thing that is different compared to 10 years ago is it's a lot easier for you to kind of stay in touch and follow and have conversations across all these different distances. And, you know, like the way that I got to know Paolo for a couple years through blogging and other things online before we actually met. And so that's a wonderful new opportunity.
Now, in my experience, I have to say that I see a big obstacle that we have to keep in mind, and 2 great opportunities. The big obstacle, we don't have to forget that culturally, in Italy, we have a bad relationship with money. For 2,000 years, our religion says that if you're rich, you won't go to paradise. Okay? So, be humble, don't show off, don't be rich, okay? Be average, okay? All the labor history is don't be too good, no, don't be too low, stay average. So when you say, I do money with what I do, they look at you and say, are you seeing, you know? If you talk to doctors, Have you ever noticed, have you ever seen a doctor that says, okay, give me the money? No, they don't touch money. They have somebody else, you know. You give the money hidden because money is, you know, something not that good. And we have to remember this, because there is nothing bad about saying, I do blogging because I want to make a company and because I want to make money. If you say this, Gaspar said, no, no, I know, I'm teasing you, you know. You make your living off doing this, but, you know, lots of people says that this is fun. No, this is an enterprise. I gave the opportunity to work to 50 families. So I was really understanding that it was a business. And business have rules, and you better learn and study. And if you don't know, ask for help and learn from your mistake. This is a big obstacle that is still there, and we have to keep it in mind that in Protestant religion and in Jewish religion, if you have money, it's because God loves you and because you're good. In Catholic, that's different. The two big opportunities. One is that because we are the 100 cities and we are all dispersed, thank God we have the net. It allows us to solve one of the obstacles that we had, that was distances and communication. So we can do things that were not possible when I started back in '78. And you had to move physically always. And the second great opportunity is that, and we were talking about this at dinner the other night, is when I started, everything was hardware, okay? And software was not that important. And then more and more, year by year, the importance moved from hardware to software. And software is just culture in a different form. It's an ideology in a different form. Well, we don't have raw materials. Maybe we don't have technology. But gee, we have so much raw material on today's web that is culture, that is creativity, that is in God feeling, that we can use if we try to be ourselves rather than emulating the Germans that are more German than we can pretend to be, even though I wear a perfect Nobel Austrian jacket, you know, but they're much better than me. And the Brits do the Brits better than we do, and the French do. So if we do the way we are, I think we can get a lot. Right in this moment, when it was the hardware moment, the Olivetti time, there was no hope. There was no hope, okay? I think that really we have a great, great moment now if we do the right things.
And a small thing is that in California we're a bunch of hippies, right? And the best entrepreneurs in technology are not motivated by money. They're folks who want to change the world. And I don't know how well that drive maps to the way your culture thinks about these things, right? But I think really consistently, if you look at the best technology entrepreneurs, money isn't the motivation. It's because technology can have such a broad and significant impact, right? I tried to change the world in the nonprofit sector, then the public sector, and it didn't work. And I'm still working on it in the private sector, and that's just a choice.
But the fun is trying. I mean, if there are so many entrepreneurs in the U.S., where the country of software entrepreneurship, and so many entrepreneurs there. I mean, with all the difficulties we have here, there still are so many entrepreneurs here, which really means that we're trying hard to change something. Marco?
Yes, as Paolo told, we were in Silicon Valley a few weeks ago, and I don't know if you have never been there, but for me, I got the feeling when I visit Silicon Valley to be. I used to give to my daughter when there was very young, you know, pop-up books. So when you have all the stuff popping up from the book, and so the Silicon Valley, from my perspective, is like a pop-up book. When you can, I walk down the street and I see Facebook or all the places that are only website usually, popping up from the real ground. They exist, really. And all of them are there. So I went to Infinite Loop, Cupertino. I went to your office, just to make an example. So it exists. And everything is there. So you just go for one beer. And of course, for sure, you have a different social attitude. And we were commenting this with Paolo, and because at a certain point we had also a networking moment in California with this Italian tour driven by the U.S. Embassy, and at a certain point Paolo was upset because nobody was introducing too much other people to him, huh? And we were commenting this fact that if we were in an American meeting, everybody take charge to introduce us to other people there. And so this is really a different attitude, for sure.
I think some of those attitudes are different, and they're great. I kind of think like of Silicon Valley as not the place that I want to be, but I think of it as like Mecca for our type of religion. And it's when I go to America, I didn't go to Silicon Valley. I went to Phoenix the other week and met all of my American colleagues there for a big meeting. And I've done that like 3 times in the last year. And every time I do, it's like I've had a religious experience because I come back re-energized, not just because I've plugged into my network, but because I get some of that kind of American attitude. But also because I'm plugging into the American market since we got bought by an American company. And the one thing that you realize is that that market, once you break into it, it's so easy to scale fast. You know, I mean, so, you know, it's not just, it's like if you were a film producer and going to Hollywood, and that's inspirational, the scale of it. I don't want to be in Hollywood. I want my film studio back in England, but I'd like to distribute my films in America, so I want a connection there, and I want to be able to tap into that market. So I think it's, you know, Silicon Valley, I think is a good place for us all to visit, because we're never going to create Silicon Valley in the next 5 years in Europe, because there's too many things that have come together there. But we can export that attitude, and we connect in all the time through TechCrunch.
We can probably buy it for a few pounds in a couple of months.
Yeah, exactly.
From a company point of view, I understand what Gigi said before about the supplier to understand the client and sell the product, the product in the right way, not the right the product, but the attitude to sell something. But I also understand that you as agencies and supplier have the possibility to have meetings, networking, and so on. But we as companies, I remember the beautiful chart by David Weinberger with the castle and marketers in the castle without any possibility to look at the world that is outside the company. So I'm very happy to be here because I understood a lot of things in these 2 days and not in the year before, even if Fiat has done a lot of incredible projects. But the question is, how is our attitude like as companies, and what we can do to be in the network and not outside the network and in the castle? This is my question.
Well, I can tell you that one of the most important experience I had in the last 2 years, just before I really stopped, I was the Italian responsible for British telecom security in Italy, and I participated with a startup of BT security worldwide team, or practice as they call. And it's interesting because if you work in a European environment rather than an Italian one, you discover, is there anyone from BT here? Can you promise you don't tell? Okay, okay. They keep on saying, we're a global company, British, okay? We're a global company. And they speak damn fast English, you know, and the poor Swedish and the Finnish were struggling to understand what this guy, but we're a global company, you know? And we say, why don't you move move from London. If you're going to go, come next to me. So what I want to say is that this is an obstacle when we think we want to be global. Then, like Fiat, we're a global company. By the way, we only eat Turin biscuits, etc. Because this is a contradiction, okay? And we have to laugh on our contradiction because it means that we understand them and we accept, but we also start making. Also, the fact that being so different as a continent, because the wiki moment is Europe and US, not just Italy. And I mean, I did consultancy for BT France. What I know, the rules that I told you before, they are different. They have a different market. And so I didn't use my Italian slides, just change a couple titles and go there. I spent 2 days talking to the guys, what's your challenge, who's your competitor, what can we do, what you really want to achieve, etc. And, I think I helped them. And then I did a consultancy in Poland for BT, took all my slides, trashed them, Well, for you, it's better. You move from Arizona up to Michigan, and you can use the same slide. We can't, okay? We can't. But I feel enriched because I think I'm kind of leaving the web. The web is the place where different people gather, and remaining different, they exchange values. This is what's happening if you try to do business in Europe. And you better know, for instance, that being an Italian company, there are 40 billion euro that the European Union is giving to Poland to do project, and none has a information technology project. So there is a lot of money. And you say, well, Germans will get this money. Wrong. Do you know that there is some friction between Poland and Germany? So if as an Italian entrepreneur, instead of crying, you talk to and I did for my association, talk to the Italian embassy in Warsaw and ask, can you help me finding partners here? You probably can make it. Obviously, you have to try, believe. Don't think that because you're Italian and you're a software, there's nothing you can do. The web is changing this attitude. It's changing the way we were inside castles. But we are the first who have to start believing that it's not just the marketeers that are there. Even us sometimes, we like...
Yeah, well, and the other thing is that, at least in my experience, even with all the Berlusconis and the stories, if I come to you and I'm Italian, I don't start with any disadvantage because I'm Italian.
We have lots of Italians.
Yeah, it's not like, it's not that we probably perceive ourselves in a.
Well, there's a thing about that I was learning over dinner last night, which is the way I believe Italians view trust and trust in business. And I think as you're looking at, okay, how do I create more of a global company, and I'm going out and discovering and trying to create all these different relationships, the Americans are a lot more like, Stalin, trust but verify. So we'll extend trust and engage in the relationship, and then if I end up getting cheated or something like that, that's going to happen. But it also is going to happen in the context of a network where that breakdown in trust becomes visible, and that's actually the biggest check that I have against a breakdown in trust. So I do as much of my business as I can in the open, and I trust and I move quicker, because I think the biggest disadvantage in all the different forms and structures that we've talked about is relative speed, right? Not just in terms of innovation, but in business development. And in the web, obviously, it's so cliche to talk about speed as the weapon, right?
Well, it's interesting. Loïc Lemour was saying. Loïc is this French entrepreneur who just moved to San Francisco to start his new startup. And he was saying, so we were having dinner in Paris before the conference, and he was saying the differences between here and there, and said one of the main differences is that in Europe, when you meet somebody, by default you don't trust them. While in the US, when they meet something, by default they trust them. I mean, then there is verification part. But I mean, we always kind of start on a very, distant way. And so, yeah.
He mentioned one thing, that the financial market. Remember that this is another, I want to say, physical obstacle. You have to take the banking system in Italy, the financial system in Europe is not really so open to finance. And with Gaspar, we were talking about if you have a business in Switzerland, you get your money net 30 days, and they beg your pardon if they are 1 day late. Okay, this is exactly as it happens in Italy. Even if you work with the government, you don't see the money in 180, 200 years. But this is part of the situation. So you have to take into account that if you want to do business here, these are not things to cry on, but are things that you have to consider. And I still think I did it. That is worth to do it here, to do it with the people, knowing what the surrounding elements are, and be an enterprise and start the enterprise, knowing what you can get and what you can't.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Wiki, any wiki? Huh? No wiki?
You're not wiki.
You don't want to add to our wiki?
Comments?
Late Saturday.
Okay, I guess.
Hey, we have one wiki contributor, but you're.
Just make one comment about self-esteem or Italian self-esteem. Often the Italians are their hardest critics and are not willing to recognize achievements within this country. The first computer I actually saw was a British computer, a ZX80 or something like that. Then there was the Apple II, et cetera, et cetera. Then I was at university, I was using a microcomputer. Well, I was a little bit late in putting together my thesis and was desperate to get it in publishable form. And a friend of mine had one of the first IBM compatible PCs that were available at the university. It was an AT&T 6300, AT&T, the American telephone company. Well, on the back it said made in Italy, because in reality it was an Olivetti. So I finished university in the United States thanks to Italy.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess that this is it. This was the wiki moment. I mean,
contributions are still open, blah, 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 blah.
Next year we're going to improve on the wiki editing. So we're done.
So, where are you supposed to go? Home?
I don't know. I mean,
No, what's up?
Okay, so
Let's give an applause for all the people who brought this group together and organized the event.
Hi. And I have a voting propose. I want to ask you for a standing ovation for Paolo Valdemarin, please.
No,
standing
wait,
ovation.
Wait.
Yes, Paolo, you deserve it.
No, I didn't.
Please.
I didn't.
Paolo, grazie.
For these guys.
No. Well, now that we got the standing ovation, you invite all your friends, but we as your friend wanted to have that.
Well, I mean, I think that this could absolutely not have happened without Benny.
Bravo, Benji.
Actually, got the idea first, and without Sergio, who edited, and of course without Silvia, who was the one who really worked, and without all the office organization and all the guys who helped us. So thanks, everyone.